Okay, so it was really interesting when I learned about automatic negative thoughts in my own practice through noticing how often the mind went to negative thinking. When I first started practicing, it was pretty prevalent. And then when I learned about neuroscience of negative thinking, how we're actually wired to be more prone to be negative, and how it was really good for natural selection to be looking for catastrophes and worst case scenarios so that we could avoid these and thwart these threats that could end our lives. So it's really good for survival, and we pass down this tendency to be negative from one generation to the other to the other. And now we don't have a lot of threats to our survival, except for taxes, and things like that. But we don't have like real live threats to our survival very often. And yet we're still wired to see every person and everything as a potential threat. And part of our mindfulness practice is actually rewiring and changing this conditioning, right? And we do rewire and change this conditioning by seeing it pretty clearly. The anxious, fearful thinking that can happen, the irrational, occasional thought that comes in, that when we're mindful of them, we're like, whoa, what was that about? But when we're not mindful, what do? We believe most of these thoughts, right? If we can pay attention to, if, most of the time we're have a lot of racing negative thoughts. Judd Brewer and I think Richard Schwartz and several mindfulness neuropsychologists refer to this state of negative thinking as the default mode network. Yeah, and in this default mode network, it's the opposite of mindful. It's when we're mindless, when we're just kind of sitting back, not focusing on anything in particular, not paying attention, and the mind just starts, jumping to and fro from one thing to another. And these thoughts tend to be very negative. Yeah, they tend to be automatic negative thoughts. And then so why are they important, right? Why do we even care that we have automatic negative thoughts that we tend to believe and we tend to spend a lot of time in? Well, one, they ruin the quality of our lives. Yeah, because when we have an automatic negative thought, neurochemicals are released, the adrenaline and cortisol, the stress hormone, is released, and it actually is damaging. These brain chemicals are damaging to the brain. In fact, they're considered toxic to the brain. So the more constant negative thoughts we're entertaining, the more toxic our brain is, and the more brain damage that we actually have. So our brains don't function as well. And we kind of want our brains to function fairly well, right? So it would behoove us to figure out how to work with these automatic negative thoughts. So today I'm going to talk about how to recognize them, how to work with them, what doesn't work, what tends to work with working with them, and how familiar we are with them. We want to make friends with our automatic negative thoughts, right? We don't want to try to get rid of them, because what is getting rid of an automatic negative thought? What is the desire to get rid of an automatic negative thought? It's a negative thought, right? Yeah. And so from a mindfulness perspective, we are always conditioning the brain. We're conditioning habits of the brain, right? So if we're in the habit of thinking negatively, we're actually conditioning these mind habit patterns of thinking negatively. Or if we're thinking, irrationally positively all the time, best case scenario thinking, which is not very realistic, we're conditioning the brain to live in fantasy land. Yeah. Whereas mindfulness, we're trying to see things clearly, realistically. We're trying to see things as they are, not Pollyanna on one side, not catastrophizing negative on the other, to trying to see things clearly as they are. And sometimes things are pretty positive and wonderful. Sometimes they're pretty negative and awful. And a lot of times they're in between. Yeah. When we see things clearly. Now, I don't know what your conditioning was like, but I was raised in a very negative family. My conditioning was negative. People were always criticizing one another or putting down characters on the TV, or yeah, it was pretty negative most of the time. And so this is what I was conditioned in, a very negative, angry household. And then when I first was a young adult, I had a lot of really low self-esteem, got involved in drugs, involved with some really unsavory characters, and they were all very negative too. But I felt right at home because we were all like, you know, life sucks and then you're gonna die, you know. Can't trust anybody. It was a really negative way of being, and we were all down in the dumps, feeling really bad about ourselves and perpetuating more and more negative thinking. Yeah. And then when I started practicing, quit all my drugs, decided to get healthy, started practicing mindfulness, what did I notice? Life sucks, then you're gonna die. You're a piece of, you know what, you're no good, you can't ever do it, blah, blah, blah. A lot of negative thinking, a lot of low self-esteem, negative thinking that I had to work with. You know, and the first thing that happened is when I would hear these things, I would say, shut up, stop, stop, stop. And so I started having a war with my thoughts. Yeah. Which didn't help. It just made it worse. And then I would get so stressed out, especially on retreat, because when you're on retreat, your mind is on loudspeaker. Do you know what I'm talking about? When you're on retreat, it's like the whole world can hear your thoughts. They're really loud. Yeah, so I had to learn how to work with them very skillfully. Yeah, and I still notice automatic negative thoughts come up. The truth is, they're good. Negative thoughts are positive in that sometimes they're warning us of danger. They're reminding us of something we have to do. They're telling us, you keep doing that, you're going to end up with, you know, diabetes or something. So we need them in order to help us navigate life. But we're looking for the ones that are just off the chart, kind of irrational. These habit patterns, right? In cognitive behavioral therapy, they call them cognitive distortions. Yeah. So I'm going to go through some of the categories so that you can start to recognize if you which habit patterns you tend to fall into, right? The first is called all or nothing thinking, right? It's either this or it's that. They used to call it black or white thinking, you know, where there's no middle ground. And there's usually middle ground somewhere. There's usually not all positive or all negative. There's usually, you want to see the nuances here. But you'll notice that when the always thinking, where you overgeneralize, I always am tired in the morning. He's always whatever. He's never listening to me. The always thinking is irrational, and it's not usually grounded in reality, because nobody and nothing is always never, one way or another, right? Focusing on the negative, the ant, seeing only the glass half empty, right, is an automatic negative thought. I was really good at that. And when people would be pointing out the positives, I'd be like, yeah, but look at the negatives. I could never imagine why people couldn't see the negatives, you know. Now I can see the negative and the positive and a lot in between, hopefully. Yeah. An automatic negative thought, believing all your feelings. So if you're having a really bad mood, then everything's bad. Your feelings can lie to you. Sometimes you get really excited and happy about something that's actually pretty negative. or vice versa. You can feel really negative about something that would be good and positive for you. So we don't want to always believe our feelings, our emotions. We want to look at the situation clearly and not have it colored by our emotions. Yeah. I have to be really careful when I'm in a great mood, because that's when I tend to put myself in bad situations, not recognize danger when danger is present. So when I'm feeling like, woo, I'm like, be extra mindful, Rania. Yeah. Some of you are like shaking, nodding your head, right? Thinking in, this is called guilt beating, thinking in terms of should, must, ought to, have to. This is trying to guilt yourself to control your behavior. I should be doing, I should have done that. I shoulda, coulda, woulda. We want to stop that if we can. Yeah. Labeling people with negative terms as lazy, loser, all that obviously is automatic negative thoughts. This is a big one for most people, catastrophizing. Should we say that together? Catastrophizing. Right? This is when we imagine that the worst case scenario is going to happen. Yeah. In just about every situation. A lot of people do this. They worry and they worry. Worrying is usually related to catastrophizing, and they're worrying about the future and imagining this terrible thing's going to happen, and that what's going to happen if this happens, what's going to happen if that happens, and it's really painful. A lot of negativity there. Mind reading is considered one of them. When we automatically assume we know what someone else is thinking. Like if someone's going like this, looking at us, maybe they didn't hear what we said, and we're thinking, oh, he doesn't like me. He's mad at me, or something like that. We do that often. We mind read. So we want to stop mind reading, and if we want to know what someone's thinking, we might want to ask them, are you okay? Yeah, whatever. And blaming, not taking responsibility for our own creations and blaming others for our situation. I'll never forget the day I realized I had to quit blaming my parents for my lot in life. It was a very sobering day. Anybody have that day here? Show of hands. It's like, yeah, your parents screwed you up. So what? Now what are you gonna do? Yeah, this is your mess to clean up, not theirs. So we have to quit blaming ourselves and blaming others. It's all toxic thinking. So the one thing we want to do, first of all, is not get lost in the automatic negative thought. We want to be able to see it mindfully, clearly. Oh, this is an irrational automatic negative thought. Mindfully see it for what it is, right? This afternoon, I teach in a mindfulness teacher training program. I have several students, I think 38. And they were supposed to sign up for these meetings with me. I have 3 mandatory interviews that I have with them. They were supposed to have already done this for the second interview. I'm almost done with all the interviews of everybody. So today I went through and I checked to see if everyone's done their interviews, who hasn't, when they scheduled their interview for, because it has to be done by April 30th, each one. Anyhow, I like to get on them, get them done, you know. And I saw 2 people have not even signed up for an interview yet, right? And I automatically went into, what the hell? I have sent 3 different emails asking these people to sign up for their thing, warn them and many times in person on the Zoom that they have to sign up for this thing. It's mandatory, you know, so I found my mind automatically going into what's wrong with these 2 people, that they didn't sign up for their interview with me, you know, and I could see myself starting to tumble down the automatic anthill, getting lost in the anthill. And I felt really angry. and I had to send them emails to ask them to please sign up, that this is mandatory. And I wanted to put like little passive aggressive comment like, hello, I see that you have not done what you were supposed to do, but I didn't, right? Instead, I brought mindfulness to my anger and I tried to work with it skillfully, which is what I'm going to suggest that you do. Yeah. So usually you want to mindfully see that there's an automatic negative thought first. And then you can be like, wow, that's a really negative thought. I'm crawling down the anthill. Then you want to bring mindfulness to how much stress and strain and tension that this thought is causing you, or this thought stream. Yeah. And then try to let it go if you can and move on with your day. Yeah. Sometimes that's easy to do, and other times it's harder. Sometimes you have to pause and bring a little bit more mindfulness to your body and to your anger and to your frustration. Yeah. Really exploring it, finding in the body, noticing all the other emotions that are present there. What else are you getting caught in? Like, there's something seductive that's keeping you in that thought stream. Like for me, the righteous indignation of superiority. They should have done. I'm like, whoa, look at that. Okay. Sobering, unpleasant to see, but it was there. Yeah. And then bringing mindfulness to that as well. And then eventually it'll usually go away once we bring enough mindfulness to it. You might want to label it judging mind, catastrophizing mind, indignant mind, impatient mind, or whatever you want to call it. Say, hello, hi, I see you. Byron Katie, you may have heard of her. She has some really great inquiry practice that she suggests that we do when we're caught in a negative thought that we can't let go of. And I've done this as well. And that's to ask yourself, is this thought true? Do I know for a fact that this thought is really true? Yeah. Am I 100% sure it's true? And then she says, I think the third inquiry is, who would I be without this thought? Yeah. Probably a lot more peaceful. Didn't have this thought. Yeah. So that can help you break free if you're stuck and you can't, the mindfulness alone isn't helping you. You can do a little inquiry practice. There's a great practice that I've done before. It's in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition called the demon, feeding the demon practice. Have I ever taught you guys that? Maybe I'll do that next time, huh? So you can imagine that your negative emotions or thoughts is a demon. It's a whole process that first you explore the demon inside your body, you find it, you locate it, you see what it looks like, what it feels like, and you ask it questions like, what is it you really want? What do you really need? And then the demon speaks to you. And then you personify the demon and bring it out in front of you. And then you imagine yourself in meditation talking to the demon in front of you. And find out when it's in front of you what it's needing and feeling. Right? Ask it. And then you bring it back into your body and you imagine turning your whole body into the nectar of whatever that demon's needing. And you pour your body's nectar into the demon's mouth and you feed it. Yeah. It's pretty profound. You might want to look up YouTube, Feeding the Demon, Tibetan meditation. Usually have a lot of insights that come from that. And the demon calms way down. So if it's a really strong trauma-based habit pattern that doesn't go away just through mindfulness or inquiry practice, you might want to try feeding the demon. Yeah. But we don't, we're trying to change our relationship to our automatic negative thoughts. We don't want to see them as the worst thing that ever happened or trying to get rid of them. We want to learn how to, they're here to warn us. They're trying to help us. They're just habit patterns. We're trying to work with them with kindness and compassion if we can. That's why the feeding demon works so well, because we're actually taking care of this demon and feeding it. Yeah. So you bring compassion to our ants. I kind of like to call them ants. You know, ants that you can't get rid of in the kitchen or something. Yeah. I'm going to read you this inspiring story of kindness. Two boys walked down a road that led through a field. The younger of the two noticed a man toiling in the fields of his farm, his good clothes stacked neatly off to the side. A thought came to the younger boy and said, "Let's hide his shoes so when he comes from the field, he won't be able to find them. His expression will be priceless," the boy laughed. The older of the two boys thought for a moment and said, "The man looks poor. See his clothes? Let's do this instead. Let's hide a silver dollar in each shoe, and then we'll hide in these bushes and see how he reacts to that instead." The younger companion agreed to the plan, and they placed a silver dollar in each shoe and hid behind the bushes. Obviously, this was a long time ago. It wasn't long before the farmer came in from the field, tired and worn. He reached down and pulled on a shoe, immediately feeling the money under his foot. With the coin now between his fingers, he looked around to see who could have put it in his shoe, but no one was there. He held the dollar in his hand and stared at it in disbelief. Confused, he slid his foot on the other shoe and felt the second coin. This time, the man was overwhelmed when he removed the second silver dollar from his shoe. Thinking he was alone, he dropped to his knees and offered a verbal prayer that the boys could easily hear from their hiding place. They heard the poor farmer crying tears of relief and gratitude. He spoke of his sick wife and his boys in need of food. He expressed gratitude for this unexpected bounty from unknown hands. After a time, the boys came out from their hiding place and slowly started their long walk home. They felt good inside, warm, changed somehow. Knowing the good they had done to a poor farmer in dire straits, a smile crept across their hearts. So we're working skillfully with automatic negative thoughts, and we're practicing being mindful. Because when we're fully mindful, all these beautiful, positive mental states arise. Gratitude, caring, generosity, like these boys did with the old farmer. And these release positive neurochemicals, oxytocin and dopamine, so that we feel really happy and good. So if we pay really close attention to the body, we'll notice ways of being, focusing that help us feel really good in the body, and we'll be more prone to those habits instead of the negative ones. But it's all quite a process. Yeah. Thank you for listening. All right, so I'm going to hit the stop recording button.